listening to episode number 6 of Born Country Radio, where we take a look back at the great country music of the 90s with the artists who were there and the artists of today in which it inspired. I am your host, Arthur Bourne, and we have another really great show for you this week with my very special guest, Aaron Tippin. I'd like to touch on a few things before we dive into the interview with Aaron. First, I'd like to thank all of you who have been listening to the show since the beginning, and likewise to those who are tuning in for the first time. We are a month into Born Country Radio, and I absolutely love talking to these artists and sharing them with my fellow country music fans. As I've stated since the beginning of Born Country, almost 3 years ago when it was just a very small blog idea, I'm not coming to you from some major media company or anything like that. Over anything else, I'm a fan of country music and these artists just like you are. I'm doing my very best to represent the country music fans, and I hope that it shows. With that being said, I take all of your feedback very seriously and I read all of it. Please remember to leave comments on each episode page at iwasborncountry.com/podcast, or even more importantly, if you are listening on the Apple Podcasts app, please leave a review, rate the show, and subscribe. Along with this week's episode of Born Country Radio, I'll be putting up a survey that I'd love for everyone to fill out. Now that we have 6 weeks of podcast episodes under our belt, I have more questions for you, the listener. I'll probably post a new survey every month or so just to make sure that we are continuing to grow, we're on the right track, and continuing to provide the best possible interviews for you each week. This survey in particular will be available at iwasborncountry.com/survey1, and I'll be putting up a link to that in our show notes at iwasborncountry.com/show6. With all that out of the way, let's get Aaron Tippin on the phone, and let's get this show on the road. This week's guest is one of the biggest stars to come out of the 90s era. With his trademark mustache, palmetto and crescent moon tattoo, and unmistakable voice, Aaron Tippin, welcome to Born Country Radio.
Hey, man, I'm glad to be here. Born Country, I like it. Man, you can very well tell I'm Born Country.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mentioned the mustache, but it looks like you've been sporting a beard for a while.
Well, elk season kind of puts the beard on me. When I go out elk hunting, I put a beard on. I keep it on me till turkey season.
That works for me. I do the same thing for deer season, so I'm right with you. Now, right off the bat, I'd like to open the floor to you to tell everybody about your latest release. However, this new release is not in the form of music, but instead a sweet cherry wine named Kiss This. What can you tell us about your new wine?
Man, I'll tell you what, it's going big guns. I can tell you that. We had a release party, here a while back, and it was so awesome. Locally, all the folks turned around, came out to taste it, and a lot of my fans showed up from all over the country, so it was really exciting and had a lot of fun, and I actually got to kick it off. I poured the first taste for everybody in the winery, and it's so cool because, this is different from my blackberry that we had 2 years ago, which I barrel selected that. But this was so different for the fact that the Stone Haus Winery gave me opportunity to be the first guest vintner that they've ever had at the winery. So with the partnership of their resident winemaker and myself, we brought this cherry wine to life, and man, am I proud of it.
That's really cool. Why did you choose to name it after your song "Kiss This"?
No, shoot, it started out kind of Aaron Tippin's Blackberry Country Jam, we thought, well, try to keep everything in the vein of country music and song because, hey, that's what it's really about with Aaron Tippin is the music. But I got to be honest, I tell you, man, people are loving this wine better than they do my music.
So, I know you mentioned you made released your blackberry wine 2 years ago. How long have you been involved in making wine, and when did you how did you begin?
I started making wine years ago. My wife's dad's the one that turned me on to winemaking. And once I tasted wine, it's actually the last beer I ever had. But on top of that, I got back to Tennessee and said, "Hey, man, I'm Mr. Do-It-Yourselfer. I need to learn how to make this stuff."
That's right.
So I did, and boy, it's just so exciting and so much fun, and to really work hard at making a great bottle of wine it's a lot of work, and it's the pleasure of seeing the look on somebody's face when they taste your wine. Really something good, and they don't expect it because most time, homemade wine's not that great, but So I'm proud to say that I had some really, really great years of winemaking. Not that I didn't have some bad ones too, but I had some really great years of winemaking. But when you get to a position like Stone Haus Winery, where every single wine must be great, it's cool to work around professionals like that, and I think it lifted me to a new level of making wine.
Sure. Now, this, of course, is just a single example of how busy you keep yourself outside of music. For years, you've been appropriately nicknamed the hardest working man in country music. Prior to getting into your big break in music, you held positions as a farmhand, a welder, pilot, truck driver, and even when you had some songs being recorded by the likes of Charlie Pride and Mark Colley in the late 80s, you were working in an aluminum plant in Kentucky. Where does this drive come from, and how did it prepare you for the country music world?
Like you said, I was raised a farm boy. I mean, you learn to work because that's what it's about. That's what you get done. At the end of the day, you look behind, you go, okay, we got that done. That's. I think it's the same approach I had to my music business, and my music. So, I really focused on it, worked hard, did the absolute best I could with what we had, and it all worked out. But as a matter of fact, I just got back with my oldest son. We purchased a new airplane, sold one, and bought another one. And I was just out giving him some dual instruction in his aerobatic training. So, both the guys following in Dad's footsteps of aviation, and it's exciting. But man, when I get off the bus, I immediately head somewhere to do something. I'm either going hunting, or I'm going flying, or I'm in the gym. If you slow down, you drop dead.
That's right. so cool. Of course, we mentioned you hit your big break in 1991 when you released your first album and single, both titled "You've Got to Stand for Something." When did you write this song, and maybe tell me a little bit about the process of choosing it as the first single?
Well, actually, Buddy Brock and myself wrote that song, and it was based on something our dads told us. You got to stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And so, it was an easy song to write. We both had dads that were great fathers and easy guys to look up to, we just sat down and made notes on who our pops were and the type of guys they were, and we wrote all around that, and that's what made that song so great. I think it's so heartfelt between me and Buddy Brock.
When you guys wrote that, like how much of that was on your end to make that the first single from your debut album?
Buddy and I wrote that song. I was on my weekend leave with my daughter. I was divorced at the time, and I had her every other weekend. So I would drive from Kentucky back to South Carolina, where I grew up and where my daughter lived, and I would get her for the weekend. So every other weekend, I would come back to South Carolina, and I'd go to Buddy Brock's house, where his two kids and Charlotte, my daughter, would play together while me and Buddy wrote songs. And that was one of the songs that came out of one of those weekends. And I remember coming back to Nashville just after I'd been signed with RCA Records, and I walked into Joe Galani's office, who's president of RCA Records at the time, and I said, Joe, I got a really cool song I want to play for you. And so I played him that song on a guitar, and Joe looked at me and said, Aaron, that's going to be your first single. And I was so thrilled, because we worked so hard trying to write material for this album, and just so thankful that it was a big hit for me.
Well, the song eventually caught the attention of the daughter, I believe, of Bob Hope, which eventually turned into your performing for the troops. I have to imagine this was a pretty major deal for you.
Oh, absolutely. And that's exactly how it happened. The song had just hit the airwaves. She was headed into the office and listening to the country station in Los Angeles. And they said, here's a new one from a guy named Aaron Tippin. And they played it. And, I was lucky enough to have it on drive time. And they played it. And she got to the office, called the radio station, said, who is that guy singing that song? And they said, well, it's a new guy named Aaron Tippin. She said, well, do you think that he might want to go to Saudi Arabia and entertain the troops with my dad? And they said, well, I don't know. Why don't you call the record label? So she called the record label, asked the same question. They said, well, I don't know. Why don't you ask his manager? So they asked my manager. My manager called me and said, Aaron, you be interested in going to Saudi Arabia and entertain the troops? I said, is this a joke? Because we were always pranksters, me and my songwriting buddies and my pals. We were always pranking each other, and I thought this was another prank that they had got him in on. But lo and behold, it was the truth. He said, "No, I'm not kidding." He said, "This is real." He said, "They want you to go with Bob to entertain the troops." I said, "Wow." And so that's how it happened. And then I jumped on an airliner the next morning, made it to Los Angeles, landed in Burbank, California. They put me in a limo, took me to the doctor, gave me every shot I needed to leave the country, got me a visa, got me a MasterCard, and I was on my way to Saudi Arabia, Bob Hope, the very next morning. 3-day whirlwind.
Do you have any cool Bob Hope stories from your time traveling with him?
No, man, amazing guy. I mean, there was no show. There was no show when we left California. There was no show. Him and one writer wrote the entire show before we got to Saudi Arabia, which was about 18 hours. And it was amazing. Those guys just sit down and they just hash out things they were going to do and what was they going to say and the jokes, and they go through all of them. And then one at a time, he would bring us into his quarters inside the C-141, and he'd say, okay, Aaron, here's what you're going to do. He said, you're going to play Buttons and Bows. And I said, what? He said, Buttons and Bows. It's Buttons and Bows. Remember my song, Buttons and Bows? I said, no, sir, I don't remember. He said, okay, well, I'll teach it to you. And so they taught me the song. So I played it, and he sang and told jokes, and it was incredible. 86 years old at that time, and what a terrific guy.
I saw a really cool picture where it looked like he's holding a microphone for you.
Oh, that's probably the coolest picture I have in my arsenal. I mean, me and Bob Hope are standing in the middle of a desert. Around us are about maybe 150, 200 Marines, armored division. These guys got the tanks, armored personnel carriers and stuff. They met us in a sand dune in the middle of nowhere. And that's the only PA system we had was Bob Hope holding a megaphone to my mouth while I sang to the troops. And it was an incredible moment. And I look back on that, and I say this quite often. I'm the luckiest hillbilly that has ever lived. I'm the luckiest hillbilly that's ever lived, and that just proves it once again. From the beginning, it just proves it once again.
And I'm going to try to include that picture with the show notes at the end of this episode, so hopefully we'll get that out there for some people to check out.
Awesome.
I'm always interested to hear about the songwriters that maybe don't catch as much of the limelight as the artists who record the songs. And throughout the 90s, you co-wrote a whole bunch of hits with Buddy Brock that you mentioned earlier. Can you give me a little insight on who Buddy is and how you hooked up with him?
Well, Buddy was kind of the songwriter guy of our community in upper South Carolina. But, he just never would jump the fence and come to Nashville and start songwriting. So I would go home every other weekend and write with Buddy and say, Buddy, you're good enough to do this. You can be a part of this. Come on, do it. And finally, when we released the first album, and he had like maybe 8 out of the 11 songs on the album, he finally decided he'd come to Nashville. So I guess I'd like to say I brought him to Nashville kicking and screaming the whole way. But once again, went on to write other great songs, Watermelon Crawl, for Tracy Byrd, and a lot of other hits, and song for Sammy Kershaw, Haunted Heart. So, he's a great songwriter and still a great friend. And man, I just really cherish the time we spent together, just being pals.
I want to move on to There Ain't Nothing Wrong with the Radio, which was a huge staple in my childhood. Now, what did this song mean for you as it hit the top of the charts somewhat early in your recording career?
Well, once again, there's me and Buddy Brock, and it all started off just like this. I had the song idea, Ain't Nothing Wrong with the Radio, and I was home on one of those weekends seeing my daughter, and me and Buddy had just finished up uh, I'm trying to think of the song. Wonder how far it is over you. He said, what are we going to write next? And I said, oh, that's easy, man. I said, I got the song right here. I said, here's how this lays out. I said, this guy's got a new girlfriend, and they're riding down the road in his truck, and she keeps punching the buttons on the radio station, on the radio. And he said, well, wait a minute, that's one of my favorite radio stations. Don't do that. And so finally he says, hey, don't fool with that. There ain't nothing wrong on the radio. And anyway, Buddy looked at me and he said, no. He said, we're not writing this song about some guy you dreamed up in your head. He said, we're going to write this song about your old beat-up, dilapidated car, Daisy, 1975 Toyota Corolla. And he said, that's what we're going to write this song about, your car. He said, because the only thing on it that works is the radio. So we did 45 minutes walking around, taking a few notes. And before we knew it, it's one of those songs that went so quick. I mean, we wrote it before we knew it. It was done. 45 minutes, hour.
Wow.
I mean, we just had it all. We had practically completely done that fast.
There's no way to really ask this without being a little goofy, but There Ain't Nothing Wrong with the Radio was re-recorded later that year with you being joined by Alvin and the Chipmunks. What was that process like?
Are you kidding? That's another highlight. Well, I've already mentioned I'm the luckiest hillbilly that ever lived. But how cool was that, man? I got the opportunity to sing with the Chipmunks. Since I was a kid, I'd followed those guys, and now I'm getting to sing with them. Unbelievable. And once again, it's just awesome. I could not have written that press.
It's Bob Hope and Alvin and the Chipmunks. That's two huge comedy legends.
Have I mentioned it yet? I'm the luckiest hillbilly that ever lived.
Maybe. I also want to talk about Working Man's PhD, which was released to radio in 1993 as the first single from Call of the Wild. Over the years, Working Man's PhD has become a big part of your live show. Can you tell our listeners about the bicycles?
Wow. I got to tell you something, Arthur. You're on top of it, buddy, because, only if you've been to the Aaron Tippin show, you'd know that I do this. And it's really awesome that I have the chance to do it. But I put together, I'm singing Working Man's PhD, which is, that's the meat and taters of the Aaron Tippin career, to be able to have songs about blue-collared, middle-class, hard-working Americans. That's been my saving grace in all of this. If there's anything different about me than the rest of the artists, I think my music is filled with those people and their lives. And my songs are about their lives, not just about their loves, but their lives. And that's why I'm so blessed with that. But as I'm doing that song and every night in the Aaron Tippin show, wherever, all around the world, I've done it everywhere. I put together a bicycle. And at the end of that, I give it away to a Marine for Toys for Tots. And that I like for that to kick off the thought, even if it's in the dead of summer, I like to kick off the thought that Christmas is coming and a needy child needs a toy.
Man, that is really incredible. And it's funny, I saw your buddy Sammy Kershaw over the summer, and that guy stuck his microphone under his arm and wrote out probably 200 some autographs while still performing. But building a bike during a song, that's another level right there.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, man, I'm happy to still be doing it. It's a cool thing. The folks that come see the Aaron Tippin show, when that Marine hits the stage, they come to their feet in homage, and man, it is such a blessing to watch that.
So
and man,
cool.
often I just stand in the corner and watch them love that Marine. It is too cool.
I also want to ask you about the music video for Honky Tonk Superman. How did Reba get involved in this without really having anything to do with the song?
Well, early in the game, Reba's husband, Normal Blackstock, and one of their agents, Trey Turner, were my first managers. And as we hung out together, and I was at the office where Reba was, many times we sat and talked, and, I was in awe of her, how smart she was, what a great business lady she is. But on top of that, she's just a whiz-bang, super cool chick that can sing great. And I'm blessed to have had the chance to spend time with her. And so I did. And, she caught wind the song, and then we were going to do a video, and she wanted to be a part of it. So we're very thankful to have her in it. The producer of one of her videos was also the producer of this video, director of this video, and director of her video. And he said, Reba, you should do this. This will be fun. Aaron's going to have a killer video. And it was. I'm telling you, it was one of the most exciting videos of the year at the end of it. And I'm just thrilled that she'd be a part of that. And still this day, man, every time I see her, I thank her.
I have to imagine that was you doing your own stunts swinging from the chandeliers.
Oh yeah, because they take too long to swap out and get a stunt guy in there. That's too much time.
Reba has a huge following amongst the Born Country Radio listeners. Do you have any other great stories or memories that you can share about Reba throughout the years?
She's just one of the most intelligent women that I've ever seen. I remember watching her when Hot Country Nights was a show out of L.A. On the ABC network, I think. And she was kind of hosting that show. I remember me and Colin Ray were on it. And I remember Reba, she would do the promos for it, while we were standing off camera and she's doing the promo for the show. And they'd say, Reba, can you cut 3 seconds off that? Reba, can you add a second and a half back on that? And she could do it every time. She was just an amazing person. She's a school teacher by trade, just a smart lady. And if you've ever seen her and been around her, you realize she's very smart.
Your wife Thea has played a major role in your recording career. Can you tell us about how you met Thea and what she's meant to the Aaron Tippin that we all know today?
Once again, we're back to Reba. And did I tell you that I'm the luckiest hillbilly that ever lived? I might have mentioned that.
I think so.
Meeting Miss Thea, that was it. I'll tell you, man, she is an awesome gal and a great friend and a great partner and the love of my life and just a genius in the music business. And her instincts are incredible. I mean, they are incredible. And I every time we come down to making a major decision, she probably ends up being the driving force behind it. And because I've learned to rely on her intuition. It's incredible. She's just so smart, and I'm lucky to have her. Believe me, if I hadn't have told her I was Garth Brooks, she'd have probably never married me.
2 years ago, you released your most recent album, 25, which of course celebrated your then 25 years in country music. The double album featured 10 of your greatest hits, 10 new songs, and 5 songs that maybe wouldn't be expected to come from Aaron Tippin. What led you to picking songs like Al Green's Let's Stay Together and Georgia Satellite's Keep Your Hands to Yourself?
I'll start with the first one. As a teenager, Al Green helped me get a lot of dates. I mean, that guy had cool music that I was so proud of, and I just every time I took a gal out on a date, Al Green was going to be playing. So that answers that question. But I guess he kind of wrote the book on love songs to me. So,
and Georgia Satellites.
Well, actually, that was my first pose down song to my first bodybuilding contest. Keep Your Hands to Yourself.
Okay.
So that's why I just became a fan of those guys. I love what they did to me. And as a matter of fact, I'm very, very pleased to say after all these years, I finally got to work with those guys. And we played a show down in Ocala, Florida. And man, I got to meet them, and I was just so thrilled. They didn't know that I was such a fan of their music, but those guys are nothing more than hillbillies with hot rod guitars. I love the music and the songwriting they did. It was just great stuff, and just thrilled to finally got to work with them.
So 2 years have passed since the release of 25. Do you have anything new in the works?
Right now we're just, of course, we got the wine. That's our latest thing. It's the Kisses Sweet Cherry wine, and I guess when we kind of get all the ducks in a row on that and get it underway, we're talking about other music and what we should do, and so we're just kind of thinking about it. I don't know what direction. Cool thing about having your own label and doing your own deal, you get to do what you want to do next. so I just wait till Thea and I will sit around and share a glass of wine and talk about it, and we'll figure out what we want to do next.
There's one more thing I want to ask you about before we move on to a couple fan-submitted questions. Along with country music, in the 90s, I grew up on professional wrestling. In 1994, you sang the national anthem at World Championship Wrestling Starrcade event.
Wow. You have done your homework before.
I watched it recently. So...
That's awesome.
How did that come about? And were you a fan of wrestling?
I'm going to tell you this. It's the I love singing. I don't think I'm the greatest crooner in the world. So you saw the only time ever that I can remember that I sang the national anthem, because I think that song is deserving of a super voice, like my wife, who does it quite frequently. And I don't do it very often. And so that was the one time Aaron Tippin did it. And you got to see it. It's right there. And guess what? I'm a Carolina boy, so I grew up on the two big R's, wrestling and racing.
Being from that area, I have to imagine you were into Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes.
Absolutely, man. I love those guys. Me and an old timer from who was a World War I vet when I was a young lad. I mean, a tyke. He was aboard the first aircraft carrier that ever took on an airplane, and the Langley, and he loved wrestling, and he taught me to love it. And man, every Saturday morning we were there in front of that TV, and buddy, we had a time just enjoying and loving those guys, just wrestling their hearts out.
I've read that a lot of the wrestlers who came up through the 90s were big country music fans. Did any of the guys approach you as a fan at that show? Or do you have any specific stories that you can share from the event?
No, I didn't, because I just went in and did it, and then I left. I had something else to do at that time in the 90s. There was too much going on. I didn't have time to appreciate the guys that I was such a fan of. But I think later on in life, met Hulk Hogan and met some other wrestlers, and they were Aaron Tippin fans, and I was fans of theirs. So it was really cool, that I got to just shake their hands, and they'd say, "Oh man, I love your song," and I go, "I love to watch you slam again."
Let's move on to a couple of fan-submitted questions. Pam from North Carolina says, "Aaron, I love You've Got to Stand for Something. As a co-writer of this song, was it based on your father and your own life experiences?"
Absolutely, Pam, it was. And that's been the core of Aaron Tippin music. I think the stuff you hear is stuff that is Aaron Tippin, and it's why I think people have the connection with me, because it's real. Because it's not just a great song that somebody wrote; it's a song that Aaron Tippin wrote, and that's why the hookup is so easy. And I think I always say this: I could walk into the Opry with a tuxedo and they probably ask for my ID. But if I walked into a truck stop, dressed like I normally am, they'd say, "Hey, you're Aaron Tippin, aren't you?"
Yep.
Because it's the lifestyle. It's who I am, and so.
Kathy from West Virginia, on the flip side, says, "You've written so many songs about your dad, but have you written anything about your mother?"
I certainly have. It's called "I Bet Mama's Been Talking to Jesus Again." Probably one of my most favorites. And it all came out of the songwriting days when I wasn't doing so hot and didn't seem to be cutting the mustard, and really thought they were going to kind of let me go. And lo and behold, I went home for those weekends that we've already talked about to see my daughter. And my mom asked, she said, "How's it going?" And I said, "Oh yeah, it's great. Everything's fine, Mom," which it really wasn't. I mean, I thought I was about to be fired as a songwriter, because I just wasn't getting anything cut, and I wasn't writing things that people wanted to listen to. And so, of course, I didn't tell her that. But anyway, a Sunday morning, I got up, packed up all my stuff, headed back for Tennessee. I got to my apartment. I lived in low-income apartments on the east side of Nashville, and I got home and I opened up my lunchbox that I usually carried to the workplace, that I just come from. I would leave my workplace, drive all the way to South Carolina, 400 miles, then take a nap, get up, spend time with my daughter. Anyway, all that aside, I had my lunchbox with me, and when I opened my lunchbox to clean it out and get ready for Monday morning, there was a little booklet, The Power of Positive Thinking. And I went, how in the world did she know that I was down and that I was feeling low? Because I never showed it. And I went, I know what it is. Mama's been talking to Jesus again.
Brendan asks, my wife and I love Aaron. Our song is 10 Pound Hammer. My question is this. What tracks that weren't released as singles do you think should have been? Personally, I think The Sound of Your Goodbye should have been.
Well, that was me and, who wrote that with me? Michael Haney. And, it's an interesting story about that. It's actually first name Sticks and Stones. But Tracy had a song that came out, and it was Sticks and Stones.
Right.
So they changed the title to The Sound of Your Goodbye. But so I don't know why. I thought that song was a smash. But, record people are funny. They got silly little things that make a difference to them, and make it work. And we tried, but by the time that song came up to be a single, then it didn't have a chance.
One more here. Anthony in Mississippi asks, if you wanted to do a duet with a current country singer, who would it be with?
Golly, I don't know. I would say my youngest son, Tom Tippin.
There you go.
But we've already done that, actually, because if you listen to the Al Green tune, you'll see that he's singing the second verse on that. And I think it's the introduction. It was his first commercial release, on our label. And the first time he'd ever done commercial music. And so it was really cool to do that with him. I don't know if we'll ever get the chance to do one again together. His career's moving really fast. So I'm just thankful for that time and what we got to do together. And man, I hope for maybe one of these days, everybody listening to Tom Tippin and talking about old Aaron Tippin. So that's what I'd like best of all.
Very cool. Make sure to follow Aaron on all the social media outlets. I'll have a link for all of them in the show notes at iwasborncountry.com/show6. Head over to aarontippin.com for merch and tour dates and updates. And also visit stonehauswinery.com, which will also be in the show notes, to purchase Aaron's new wine. And Aaron, I appreciate you taking the time to call in. There are so many more great songs and moments from your career to cover. I'd like to have you back on the show in a few months.
Hey, we can sure do that. We'll get some new music, man. We'll sure do it. And, I think I have a sequence that we should use. First of all, you go to stonehauswinery.com. You get your bottle of that delicious Kiss This sweet cherry wine, and then you get you the Aaron Tippin 25 album, and you just have yourself a ball enjoying that music and understanding that this is a guy who is the luckiest hillbilly that ever lived.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for calling in, Aaron.
Thank you, buddy. Hey, buddy, I appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
All right, take care.
See you, buddy. Bye.
There ain't nothing wrong with the radio, there ain't nothing wrong with Born Country Radio, and there ain't nothing wrong with Aaron Tippin, that's for sure. Aaron was a blast to chat with, and hopefully we'll have him back on the show sometime soon to discuss more of his great 90s hits. Make sure to head over to aarontippin.com to check out his merchandise store, get yourself some music, get a t-shirt. Also, check out stonehauswinery.com and get yourself a bottle of Aaron Tippin's Kiss This cherry wine. I can't wait to get a bottle myself. All of Aaron's social media links will be available in the show notes. Help me out by answering the survey questions at iwasborncountry.com/survey1. As always, make sure to tell all of your country music loving friends about Born Country Radio, as the more folks we get listening, the bigger the show will get. Thank you for listening. I'll talk with everyone next week, and until then, for iwasborncountry.com and Born Country Radio, my name is Arthur Bourne, and I was Born Country. Take care.